still got another couple of minutes before we begin. But if you see on the screens, we've got a little VVox session that you can join, because we're going to be asking you, the audience, a few questions of your own. So we'd really love you to get involved. So you can scan the QR code with your phone, or you can just put in this address. But equally, if you wouldn't like to participate, that's absolutely fine. But we would love you to. So we'll get started in a couple of minutes. And I'm assuming someone will give you the thumbs up when it turns on online. Oh, it's on online already. Oh, okay. So yeah, we'll just wait a couple of minutes to get started. So if you're watching online, bear with us, and we'll be getting started shortly. Thank you. Whose is this? Is this yours?
It's some terrible.
Is it yours?
There was a period of like 5 years where it was like a lot of house music, but it's so of the time, like that it's so.
I love the EDM. Actually, I'm going to do somewhere. I'm going to do my own radio. I might be doing rubbish, but I'm going to do it now.
It's like it's a really creative, like side of things. I don't mind it, but it is really fun, especially when you do like music like. Yeah. Well, you know what it's like. You know, turn up to a section and produce 6 and so yeah, I do a lot of my vocal production as well. Do you do vocal production?
I can. I'm actually learning all the things I'm doing. I'm learning. I've actually been learning to produce or fully produce, but I've only been able to listen to a few lectures. I've got all the information there, but I'm kind of I know I'm picking it up. Around, you know, and I was like, I said, right, by the way, I'm learning this, can you tell me if I'm right or wrong? And he went, you're spot on.
It's funny that, and he's like, oh yeah, you're right.
Really? And then I'm like, kind of, so I know I'm hearing it, you know, I'm hearing how it's more sort of down, so I'm hearing it too.
Oh, yeah,
because I'm so used to hearing his vocals now. Not mine, but you know.
Yes, I know what you mean. This is like old records and like, that is technically out of tune, but you know, like kind of like a play.
Yeah, I mean, of course, she's not singing.
But not yet, because now it's like, has to be through melody. Yeah. Through melody, and it's like,
Which I think is going to change, because I think that's the way that you're going with the AI.
Exactly, I think you're going to
detune just to prove that it does themselves.
Yeah, because it's convincing. You want to know it's a real person or a voice, you know.
Yeah, well, but it's not. It's never really good at because the lyrics are actually, to be fair, they're getting better. But you know, so we know that there is still the skill there, and that was kind of, I think, separating people.
Yeah, there is something fundamental when you listen to it. I think that's
I've said that when someone said it isn't.
Oh, really?
I said, well, the only reason I thought it was AI was so because of yeah. Yeah, I love it.
So amazing. It must be AI.
Yeah, no, it was actually backing vocals, I thought, and you know, but yeah.
You know, I do feel like some days, like, I've been like a bit uninspired, like parts of lyrics. Always is like a starting point, you know, like, and then it's like just, you know, just generate ideas, and then you take it from there.
Yeah.
Are we doing this thing?
Hello. Good early afternoon/evening. My name is Sam Murray. I'm a lecturer here at the School of Music and Music Management. And tonight we are going to be putting the spotlight on songwriters. This is part of a series of events called the Music Exchange here in the School of Music department, where we have various different members of staff and also postgraduate researchers just sharing a little bit of an insight into the stuff that they've been up to and showing how actually the research that we're doing here at the university has all kinds of applications in the music industry and the wider world as well. But as I mentioned before, we want to make today's session quite interactive. So we've got our little VVox that will be up at various different points. And we really want to get your thoughts and opinions on the topic as well. There's also going to be opportunities for you to ask some questions too. So before we delve into today's session, I'm just going to give you a very quick overview as to how this session is going to be working. And basically, we have pulled together some of the research that I've been doing with my colleague Jenna Doyle here, who will introduce herself shortly, into kind of 3 themes that we're going to be examining today. So we're going to be looking at the recognition of songwriters, we're going to be looking at the practice of actual songwriting and songwriting camps, and then we're going to be looking at the commercial returns of songwriting as well. So amongst each of these themes, what we're going to do is we're going to set the scene by gauging your understanding, your knowledge about this. It does not matter. You could have come into this room knowing absolutely nothing about popular songwriting, or we may have some songwriters in the audience with us as well. All of your thoughts and knowledge are really, really welcome today. So we're going to get your thoughts about our themes to start off with. Then I'm going to be sharing a bit from some of the research that Jenna and I have been doing. And then we're going to speak to our panel. And then we're going to open the floor back to you to ask questions at the end of each section or to share your thoughts and opinions, because you may have some ideas that you want to share about this too. So that's how it's going to work. Hopefully that all makes sense. Yep, and get some nods in the room. Brilliant. Before we begin, though, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background to the research that Jenna and I have been doing that's kind of brought about this event today. And it's actually been looking at the position of songwriters in the Eurovision Song Contest. So we're not just going to be focusing on Eurovision today, so please don't run out the door immediately. But we wanted to look at Eurovision as a microcosm of what's happening in the wider industry. So I'm just for a few minutes going to share with you some of the highlights that we found in our research, just to kind of set the scene, and then we'll bring in some of our panelists as well. So I want to invite you to picture something very, very simple. A stage, lights, cameras, pyrotechnics, and everything dialed up to 11. But behind all of that, behind the sequins and the lasers and the fan favourites in Eurovision, there's a quieter story, a story about the people we don't see on stage, the songwriters. The project that Jenna and I have been working on began with a very basic observation that Eurovision, at its heart, is a song contest. It's in the name. And yet the people who write these songs have almost disappeared from the narrative. As Eurovision has grown from concert hall broadcasts in 1956 up to global arena spectacles where they are today, the visibility of performers has exploded, while the visibility of songwriters has shrunk. And we wanted to understand why. Why is that the case? So we went to the source. We conducted surveys and interviews and had about 47 survey respondents, 10 interviews with Eurovision songwriters, including someone on this stage, and at different stages of their career. So we had some people who'd won national finals in Eurovision, some who'd written fan favourite songs, and some still dreaming of making the contest at all. And what emerged was a remarkable combination of passion, frustration, creativity, and resilience. So the first thing we asked our songwriters when we brought them together was this: why Eurovision? Why do you want to get involved with something like Eurovision? And what we found, I think, was quite beautifully human, because overwhelmingly the songwriters told us that for them, Eurovision is a creative challenge unlike any other. So writing a song that must be instantly memorable, it must be 3 minutes long, emotionally communicative and performable live, all while representing a nation. It's a puzzle, a gauntlet, a dare. The songwriters we spoke to spoke about exposure, the fact that Eurovision is one of the largest live music events in the world, with well over 160 million viewers in 2025. And for many, It's the only realistic chance to get international attention as a professional songwriter. There are, of course, many other contexts, but those opportunities are quite limited. Exposure is also quite a loaded word within the music industry. I'm sure many of us in here will have stories of how we were asked to perform a gig and not be paid for exposure, or to write a piece of music for somebody else for exposure. And it became quite a crucial word in this study. One songwriter we spoke to described Eurovision as the only songwriting contest for professional writers. Some of us may debate that, of course. Another said it's the challenge that hooks you. And this particularly came up again and again, this idea that it's a unique opportunity and challenge. One of the strongest findings that Eurovision songwriters came to us with was that now Eurovision looks exactly like commercial pop writing. It's strategic, it's collaborative, and it's highly structured. Songwriters described to us working to a brief. They talked about navigating delegation expectations and balancing a competitive sound with artistic authenticity. And that tension, the kind of push and pull between what's going to score well and make points and what feels true to the performer is really now at the core of Eurovision songwriting. And this echoes a wider trend around the music industry, where we're seeing more collaboration in songwriters, more co-writers per song. Some songs in the charts have up to 10 or 12 songwriters involved. More strategic creativity. And in many ways, Eurovision has become a compressed, high-pressure version of the ecosystem in which songwriters are existing in as well. What we also found was that Eurovision absolutely opens door for songwriters. Writers told us they gain new contracts, new commissions, better industry visibility, and in many cases dramatically improved their streaming numbers, even when their songs didn't reach the final. But these opportunities sit alongside very real challenges that not only impact Eurovision, but also the wider industry. A significant number of writers said they had to pay out of pocket to actually go to see their songs performed at Eurovision. They had to pay for their travel, their accommodation, and even contest tickets. And 13 out of the 16 respondents who we spoke to who had specifically been to the finals said that attending Eurovision for themselves was not financially viable. This is something we also saw with the experiences of wider songwriters engaged with songwriting camps. Songwriting camps cost money to attend, in excess of over £2,000 in some cases. And this has become a really crucial financial barrier to be able to access things as well. So ultimately, we found that our research kind of revealed a simple truth, that the Eurovision Song Contest depends on songwriters, but the contest doesn't yet treat them like the creative core it relies on. And if Eurovision and the wider industry is going to continue evolving to stay relevant and to stay emotionally resonant, then we need to bring songwriters out of the shadows and into the spotlight that they have earned. Because the contest and the music industry cannot exist without songwriters. And it's time the world of music recognised that. So I'm going to hand over to our panellists now to introduce themselves. And first of all, I'd like to invite Emma Gale. So please go ahead.
Hello everybody. So my name's Emma Gale. I am a songwriter. And I was lucky enough to get my song to Eurovision last year. I came to songwriting very late in life, and so I'm relatively new to the whole industry anyway. And I managed to get 3 national finals last year and 3 national finals this year. So it's been a really exciting time, but we'll go into more of the detail throughout this evening, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. And Jenna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Jenna Doyle. I am both a songwriter and an academic. So I started writing professionally in 2009, secured my first publishing deal in 2010. So it's quite a long time ago now. And across the years, I've had a US Billboard #1 with Deborah Cox. I've had #1s in Japan and South Korea numerous times. Probably the biggest selling single I've had over there was 2.5 million, I think, at its height. So, and then I'm also an academic in music, so I work for Middlesex University London. Sam and I have known each other over the years from then, and I've got a particular interest in songwriting and how the industry treats songwriters. Beyond the creativity, what is their life like? How do they get paid? What is the reality of living this creative life? So, yeah, that kind of sums it up.
Thank you, Jenna. And Catherine?
Hi, excuse me. Hi, I'm Catherine Williams. I kind of sit on the other end of the spectrum, actually. I realise as we've moved down the line that it's very well placed. I'm from the academic side of songwriting. About 10 years ago, I was lecturing in musicology at Leeds College of Music, actually, here, and realised that I was teaching loads and loads of singer-songwriters and asking them to write academic things and to look into the history and practice of songwriting. And there wasn't a book around that was one book that they could use as a resource for that. And as a result of that, many years down the line, I was one of an editor. I co-edited a couple of collections on the figure of the singer-songwriter, which have become quite important for their textbooks in various colleges and universities that teach songwriting. So that was about 10 years ago. And more recently, I've been involved as a research fellow on a research project called Songwriting Camps in the 21st Century. And on that, I've been shadowing songwriters, including Emma here, and really getting an observational and an analytical insight into the creative practice of collaborative songwriting. So that's why I'm here today.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we're going to start off with our first theme for today, which is looking at songwriter recognition. And as promised, we're going to start with your thoughts and opinions. So if you can go back to your VVoxes, and if you haven't been able to join yet, the joining details are at the top. And we would like to ask you to do the following. Which songwriters who are not known for performing can you name? So if you can give us names of songwriters who are not necessarily known for performing. If that's one of you in the room as well, put yourself down, please, honestly. But which songwriters can you think of? And I can see some of the answers are coming in now. We had a little bet on which names would appear as well. So let's see if anyone's on the money. So while some of these names are still coming in, do any of our panelists want to respond? Are there any names that you expected to see there?
I didn't expect to see Alan Roy Scott there. He's a friend of mine, so that was lovely to see his name pop up.
It's nice to see Kathy Dennis on there. Love Kathy Dennis's work, both as an artist and a songwriter. Later went on to have massive commercial success as a writer in her own right.
Yeah, happy to see Guy Chambers up there.
It's quite a diverse list. We've got Holland Dozier and Holland, who were behind Motown. I think I saw somewhere Stock Aitken and Waterman, who are behind a lot of the 80s songs, Burt Bacharach, Bernie Taupin, Amy Wadge, of course, who's written a lot for Ed Sheeran. So we've got quite a few different names. This is really, really good to see. So thank you very much for sharing those. We'll be collecting this and having a little bit of look at these later as well. So thank you very much. I'm just going to close the poll over now. Wonderful. So before we delve into this topic a little bit more, we also wanted to share some of the things that we kind of found from our research about how songwriters like to be recognised. And within our research, it is within the Eurovision context. But there were some things that kind of were raised and that were pertinent that can be kind of transmitted across different areas. One of the stats that we haven't got a graph for and we can't show today was we asked the songwriters who are the kinds of people who are recognising what you'd done. And in the responses, we mostly had other songwriters being the main source of recognition. Sometimes we might have had the fan media, but the general media tended to avoid talking about the songwriters, and the TV broadcasters didn't seem to care and didn't engage. And when we were doing research, it ended up being these fan websites who wrote in-depth articles. I think I even read one about you, Emma, online as well, in-depth articles about the writers. We also then decided to ask our surveyors, well, how do we fix that? What are the kinds of ideas that you would like to see in terms of recognition? And I actually think a lot of the things that they wanted to see wasn't really that much of a demand. First of all, it's, we would like to go and see our song performed, please. Pay us, allow us to go and access it. But also they were interested in having an online website where you could see the songwriters' profiles alongside the performers. They wanted to see networking events. And we are currently, hopefully, we're trying to pull off a networking event that will be at the Song Contest in Vienna this year as well. But as you can see, these songwriters aren't really asking for much. They're just asking to be recognised for the labour they put into the Eurovision Song Contest and recognising that if they are acknowledged for their role, this can also lead to them getting extra work. So if you have had a song at Eurovision and people know you've written it, they might want to work with you on other projects. So I'm going to come to our panel to ask these kind of two questions. And it's up to you kind of how you want to respond to these. You can stick to the question if you want. You can go off course a little bit. But here are the two questions to stimulate discussion in this part. So first of all, are songwriters given enough credit for their work? No, yes or no answers. I want a bit more detail, please. But also, who is actually recognising the role of songwriters in the industry? So I don't know, Catherine, would you be happy to go first on this?
Yeah, I mean, this will be a waffle more than a direct answer. But I think, well, he asked for not a yes or no, but I think no, songwriters aren't given enough credit for their work. But I think it's not an easy fix. I mean, you've suggested some easy fixes, but it requires a sort of industry-wide change to make that happen. Adopting it here and there isn't necessarily going to lead the change. But I just wanted to touch on the second question, who's recognising the role of songwriters in the industry? Because something I've noticed in my work with the Songwriting Camps project, and it, as Sam intimated, it has sort of spread wider, it's more about popular music songwriting in general, is that knowledge is really important. So recognising the role of songwriters, almost being recognised by another songwriter as having written on something, even if that hasn't commercially done terribly well, actually knowing that that person wrote with that person and that song got played there, and being able to sort of trace the history and to know the facts is really important. So I think being recognised by other songwriters is kind of key.
I think it's very much that idea almost of kind of lineage. You kind of show who you've worked with to be able to access more work and also access better rooms to write with others in. And Jenna, I wonder, from your professional perspective, has the previous credits that you've got allowed you to open up some of those doors and allowed you to expand the possibility of the markets you work with and the people you work with?
Oh, 100%. So when you get into songwriting, you build a community of people around you. Songwriters look up other songwriters. If I hear a great song, wherever it is, I go find out who wrote it. I go find out how that song came about. So you build up a network of people, and essentially there is a correlation between the bigger projects you're involved in, the bigger the hits that you've got, the more quickly the doors open. Now, that's not always the case. You will find yourself in a session where you'll be working with new people, really fresh to the industry. Maybe it's a new artist, and I think that aspect of Eurovision is so exciting that it can often launch very, very exciting new artists. You find that there is that correlation between success and doors opening for you, but you can have the odd time where a session like that you'll find success from it. Songwriting is, I think of songwriters as being the glue, or the kind of the middle people, if you like, quite often within projects, because you have the artist and you have producers and you have the business people, if you like, and songwriters kind of make everything work in the middle. So you will get into a room with an artist and you will see the potential in that artist and you will bring the best out in them. And the artist responds to that and they become better writers as well. You work with producers, you start speaking producers' language. So songwriters are incredibly flexible people. when you meet them. And I think that's part of the problem, is that because we are so flexible and our role changes. You know, I've been a producer, I've been a vocalist, I've been a top liner, which is someone who does melody and lyrics. I've been involved in the bottom line. All of these different things, the different hats that we wear, I think unfortunately means that sometimes the boundaries and kind of the lines, you can't really draw a box around what we do. And I think that's where the difficulty has translated into credit, into getting paid, because we are these, you know, fabulously flexible people in the middle. So, yeah.
And Emma, do you see that flexibility when you step into a songwriting camp or into the room as well?
Because not only, I mean, obviously, if you've got a publisher, I've got a publisher, but I also am the admin. I'm also the person that sends stuff to the BBC to get them to play it if they'll play it for me. So I think the role of the songwriter is much bigger than just the room. And I wanted to start with the second question, actually, because who's recognising the role of the songwriter? But what is the role of the songwriter? You know, it's massive. And I think that is, going back to the first point about the credit, you know, we're having to have conversations. And I think sometimes we're frightened to ask for too much credit because we know there are 100 girls or boys behind us that will come in and write that song because they'll do it for nothing. So you're almost frightened to kind of go, well, you know, do I fight for this 15% or 10%, or do I see it as a loss leader and that will then open up doors for the future? And at the moment, I'm kind of not fighting that much because I want to carry on working. And it's a kind of challenging position to be in. But again, you know, that's also in the room as well. You know, we're having to come out of the room and say, well, actually, I understand the producer owns the track. You know, can I have a share of the master? You know, because I've done this and I've done that, and you're almost having to pitch your own role within the song as well. So it is important to have those conversations, but they're not easy, and it's you have to be quite brave.
One of the things I'm thinking about is because we talked about this idea that as a songwriter you have to be recognised for your skills to then go and work with other people. But how did you deal with that when you were starting out? So when you were first writing songs and you've not got that reputational base to build from, and I'm sure there's a few people in here who are starting out in their journeys, how do you start that process? How do you build those up? You
pimp yourself out. You do everything and anything, literally. You know, you have to get that break. And actually, I've not been, as I said earlier, in this industry for that long. So I did get quite a lucky break quite quickly. And that was by investing, really, going to songwriting camps, paying to meet people, really, getting mentors, working with people. And then eventually, if you work hard enough or if you're lucky enough, then something breaks. But simple as that.
And what are your thoughts about that, Jenna? How did you kind of start and build your reputation? What were the kind of key things you had to do?
Yeah, so when I started out, there was this book called The Unsigned Guide. It still exists, but it's all online now. But it was a physical book full of like emails and numbers. And I remember writing to pretty much everybody in the manager publishers section. You know, I spent a fortune on, you know, envelopes, and it was back in the day of still, you know, CDs and things like that. And it was about meeting my publisher, essentially. They were very small publishing company. There were only 3 people in it. They were starting out. They were in dance music and had ties to Ministry of Sound at the time, but wanted to go into pop music. And I was their first pop signing. And I remember meeting them, and you know, they were so tiny. But this industry is about people. And I met them, and I just clicked with them in the sense that I just knew they were going to be people I knew I was going to work really well with. They'd listened to my stuff and they'd really engaged with it. I put together 3 tracks, you know, quality over quantity for sure. And that was the beginning, and they signed me, and they've been really helpful. Although I will put it out there, nowadays you can absolutely self-publish. And I know so many kind of very successful songwriters who self-publish. So having a publisher isn't everything, but you know, God bless the Unsigned Guide.
And Catherine, it's quite interesting because alongside your research, you're actually starting out in the world of professional songwriting as well. And I wonder if you could give us a bit of insight into that journey. And have you encountered any of these kind of issues that have been raised so far about needing to have recognition? And do you identify with anything that Emma or Jenna have said as to how they started out their journey?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I mean, I will say that I'm not songwriting on a level that these guys are writing on, but I have, through the work that I've been doing, through being present at songwriting camps, found myself in songwriting situations. So the very first one that I attended, which was in Scotland a couple of years ago, I'd planned to go as an observer. It had all been agreed with the administrator that I was going to go as an observer. And when I got there, the songwriters leading the camp said, no, you can't do that. You've got to go in a room and write. Which scared me quite a lot, but I did. I went in, and just like Emma was saying, I think you just have to kind of put the fear and the nerves and the anxiety to the side and just do it. And because I'd done it once, then people knew what I could do, what I could offer, what I could bring to the room. And so the next day, when it came up again, my reputation was already there, because even though it wasn't a high standard like you guys, I was writing, I was contributing. And then I found after that carrying on with the research project that I'm involved in, actually my role began to change, that I was attending these camps as an observer participant and songwriting as I did it, so I'd always have that part of my brain active. And it was an interesting role to navigate, because I was very aware that I was collecting information for the research project and I didn't want to overstep a line, so I was always prepared to walk the line that the writers in the room were comfortable with me walking. Sometimes, indeed, at a Eurovision camp I was at with Emma, it meant that in the middle of a session I was observing, someone said, well, you're here, what have you got? What can you bring to this? And I hadn't been aware that I was writing in that session, but it suddenly asked of me, and that was okay. I sort of stepped into it, and it was great. But so that's a sort of biographical description of it. But it's the reputation. It grows quickly, and even when it's not cuts or streams, it's your reputation of who you've worked with and what briefs you're working on, and who you know. And I found that very quickly, actually, maybe fast-tracked because of the connections I made through the project, that those connections happened, those networks were happening, and doors were opening, and they still are. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we're now going to turn over to you folks, if we can get somebody on the roving mic, to get your kind of thoughts and opinions about these questions. But before I ask for any hands, I just wonder if you can give me a show of hands in the room if you are a songwriter. Okay, we've got a lot of songwriters here. So you must have opinions about this. Would anyone like to share their thoughts? You can either answer one of these questions, or you can ask our panel something about recognition at all. Has anyone got any thoughts they want to share? Yeah, go for it.
Cheers, man. Sort of just full disclosure, really. I don't want to stand here being a bit weird, but I wrote the UK's Eurovision entry in 2003, and we came last, and I got battered in the press. I didn't want to be recognised. That's why I went into it. I wanted to keep my head down, and then I found myself on the front page of the Daily Star as like public enemy number one. And on top of that, I've just finished as 24 years as director of music at LIPA, leading their songwriting courses there. So I just wanted to share that with you, but yeah, no one recognises me in the room because I've kept my head down, really, after getting burnt badly. It did get to number 15 in the UK charts, which is one of the top results. But I just wanted to say that. But thank you.
And did you find in your experience, was there some positives in terms of the experience? Did you have any recognition for the writing skills that were involved? It was funny because the Iraq War happened just before we got to Eurovision, and everybody decided they hated Britain, and they still hate us, the UK, and that's the case. Prior to that, it was getting loads of radio play, loads of press, loads of TV, Blue Peter, everywhere. It was everywhere, and everyone was going, great song, great song. Day after the contest, shit song, shit writer. And there you go. So.
Well, wonderful. I think congratulations for getting there anyway, though. It's not easy.
It's a big achievement. Yeah. No, thank you very much, Martin. It's much appreciated. Is there anyone else who would like to share some thoughts in the room about these questions Or has anyone got anything they want to ask the panel? You don't have to have written a Eurovision. You might have. I don't know. It would be great if everybody in the audience had written a Eurovision song. I'd be really interested for some of the students in the room as well. Have you got any thoughts about this? Do you feel, from your experiences, do you feel that songwriters are being recognised? Do you look and find out who's written songs? How important is that kind of information? Have any of you got any thoughts? Everyone's avoiding eye contact with me now. We've got a thought here. Yeah, please come for it.
Is this working? Yes, it's working.
Yeah,
Sorry, I've got no kind of stories about my success at Eurovision, but I wanted to ask. I'm a complete sucker for songwriting scenes in movies and in TV shows, and I just seem to see them all the time. You know, anything. You know, all of these musical biopics that come out and so on. And they're beautiful scenes. I do a bit of my own songwriting. It never looks like, you know, Bruce Springsteen or Bob Dylan kind of sitting on the floor with a guitar and coming up with amazing songs. But I wonder whether that kind of cultural image of the songwriter that seems quite strongly present, whether that plays a role in kind of how it feeds into industry experience and an actual lived experience of songwriting.
That's a fantastic question. Does anyone feel like they want to start and take this one on?
I guess it depends if you consider yourself an artist. You know, there have been some great biopics, you know, and there's been so many amazing kind of songwriter artists, you know, across the years. Personally, I can only kind of talk about just purely from the songwriter side, in that a publisher helps you to something called sync, essentially, so that when you sign your deal, you can write songs and that your publisher will help place them for you. And that could be on an advert, you know, selling cold sore cream, or it could be as part of a TV show, it could be as part of a film. And the great thing about, you know, writing is that will build up royalties in the background, which will kind of last across your life. And it's like building up a pension. So you get all these songs out there doing things, and the royalties kind of compound over time. I would love to kind of have more of that, you know, romantic view. Do you have that romantic view?
No, it's hotel rooms, isn't it? With the not the pimping, but the hotel room with the producer and the artist, and it's not very romantic at all, really, is it? But I was thinking about what you were saying about the skills for sync. It's actually a different skill, isn't it? It's a different kind of writing, especially for film and TV, because you don't want to kind of you don't want to take away from the scene. There's always an exception, but that's an interesting thing.
I also think in a lot of media representations as well, not only are they a lot of people looking back on their own lives through rose-tinted glasses and romanticising the moment a song came about. We've got to take it with a pinch of salt, for sure, when we see those. But also I think that the things that they show in terms of how writers are kind of finding inspiration aren't necessarily the way that the commercial music world is working now. So I think that, you know, when we watch the Bob Dylan biopic and he's sitting there and he's writing in his pants of, you know, whatever song it was, I don't think that necessarily is replicated as much today within certainly the commercial side of things. So commercial songwriting, there's a whole load of processes and there's a whole load of people who kind of need to be involved in the room. But perhaps also it can create some barriers in the fact that people think, oh, I need to have some kind of very, very special divine intervention to be considered a songwriter, when actually it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of work and labour kind of behind that to get to that point. So it's a really, really great question. I don't know, Catherine, if you had any thoughts you want to add.
I mean, just to reiterate some of what you said, but I think some of the romantic portrayals in the media can often be suggesting that divine intervention, suggesting perhaps that writing a song is a linear process, that you start at the beginning and you end at the end, and you've been, you know, holding your guitar and your pencil and the notepad. And whereas actually, certainly in songwriting camp rooms, it's a craft. It needs pulling apart and stitching back together, and it's much more like taking the building blocks and assembling them and having many people in the room. So it's not romantic in that way. It's very rarely aesthetically so pleasing, but it is creative and it's a craft and it's, it gets there, doesn't it? It gets the results.
Definitely. Thank you very much for your question. Did we have a question over this side of the room before? Did I see? Or Zach? Go on, if we can have a question over for Zach.
Thank you. So the songwriters aren't credited. If you think in the context of a streaming service, you see the singer or the artist and then the name of the song. I imagine, I've not done the research, obviously you guys have, but I imagine the listener cares more about the artist because of their brand and all of their history. How could you theoretically make the listener care enough to go look at the songwriter and find out who wrote it? And because obviously they're going to enjoy your style of writing. How do we make them care, basically?
That's quite interesting because I don't know, and I'll say it again, being new to the industry, I've noticed that a lot of the producers now have their name in the track. So they've got, so-and-so producer, and then featuring the artist. And I actually considered over the last year or so, well, actually, I might start, on my rider saying, well, if you want me on your track, then my name goes in the title. So that's the way that songwriters could get recognition, in the same way that producers are getting recognition now. So, yeah, perhaps that could happen.
I wonder, this is really controversial, sorry everyone, but I wonder how much it matters. Because you were talking about it matters that songwriters are recognised, obviously given credit financially, that's important, but recognised by other songwriters and by other people they're going to work with. So I wonder how much it actually matters if the listener knows who's behind the songs. Please answer.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point. And I think, well, we don't know at the moment, but we know that it's sticking for the producers. So perhaps, we should give it a try.
I think a lot of songwriters, they have no interest in being famous, or they have no interest in being well known. I think that's part of the allure of songwriting. You get to be creative and behind the scenes, but you get your credit. But they want the pride in their work. So I think it's just about where there is opportunity to credit the songwriter, be it on Spotify or any streaming service, just have their name there. Just have their name there. And anybody who's interested in songwriting will then go find it and look it up. But, across the years, the really, amazing songwriters I've met, they have such pride in their work that has nothing to do with public opinion or being famous.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your great questions. So we're now going to move on to our next section, which is about songwriting practices. And we're going to ask a very, very broad question. I'll give you a bit of time to answer this. How do you think songs are actually written? What do you think the processes are that people go through? Or I'm going to ask the songwriters in the room as well, what are your processes? So how do you write a song? You could talk about whether it's the lyrics first, the melody first, where ideas are kind of sourced from. Or if you've never written a song before, how do you think that people do this? So whilst we're going to give a couple of minutes just for some of these answers to come in, and then I'm going to bring in some of our panelists in a second as well to share some of their insights and thought. But we'll just give you a minute or two to bring some answers in. Maybe we could, I don't know if it's possible to get a little bit of background music while people are typing their answers. Ooh, there we go, lovely. And also feel free to have a chat with the people around you about this, What do they think about it? I absolutely adore whoever wrote unearthly divine intervention. That's wonderful. So don't worry, we have on the next slide a way to display more of these, so don't worry if you see your contribution disappearing. I'll just give another moment to put some in. There certainly wouldn't be a space where we talk about Eurovision without a reference to ABBA. And I'm assuming Benny Andersson is Benny from ABBA. I don't know how to write songs. I only know that if I don't sit at the piano for 4 hours every day, I don't have any. Great. So we're just going to come and watch it. I can see loads of students very frantically typing. But we're just going to come to close the poll now. So apologies if you've not been able to get something in time. But here are some of the answers that we've had. Oh, they keep changing all the time. So we've got people saying I've written lyrics first, melodies first, most recently groove first, most of this. Someone's put, I decide a theme and a catchy melody I found, but I usually end up straying away from it. Someone's put genre dependent, question mark, sometimes melody. Someone who uses a lot of coffee as part of their process. I don't know how to write songs. Oh, that's the Benny Andersson quote again. I was going to repeat that. Mechanical methods, data-driven, that's fascinating. Play a bit, find a hook, and build the song around that. Brain dump of themes, words, phrases around a specific idea, I think that might be. So I want to ask our panelists, how do you go about writing songs, or how have you read about how other songwriters go about this? What are the processes that you engage with or you've seen other people engage with? Do you want to start, Emma?
I've probably done most of those, including the divine intervention, because it happens. It can. I remember somebody saying to me, I was doing my master's, I think, at the time, and I was interviewing songwriters, and this kind of guy said to me, "Oh, he said, yeah, I get this feeling," and it just, and I was like thinking, it's a bit, it was very, very pretentious, But actually, I have had that myself. I have had like a kind of sense of, I've got to write it down because I need to. And it does absolutely happen. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it does. And then I also love writing data-driven, mechanical, really, crafted songs. So I've done all of them. I think now, for me, I now look, first of all, about the thing is you're trying to get emotion across to somebody. So what is the emotion you're trying to kind of get from one person to another? What's the core message? So I kind of try and start there with the concept. And I hate it, absolutely hate it, when a producer says, and we don't care about lyrics. They might not care about lyrics, but your soul does. So I think it's really important to make sure that the lyrics and the melody and even the kind of the groove is all done at the same time. That's kind of how I've worked out my method over the last couple of years, and it seems to be doing all right. So.
Great, thanks, Emma. Jana, what's your method?
Yeah, there's loads of different ways that it can go, but I guess two different ways that came to mind is songwriting can often be like therapy, either for the songwriter or for the artist, and you find yourself in a session where someone has a story. It could be the artist, but it could be another writer in the room. And everybody centers in on that energy because it's real, it's authentic, and it's right in front of you. And it's incredibly inspiring. And those are probably the most fun sessions I've had because it gets incredibly deep and incredibly emotional. And those songs are truly written, I guess, from the heart, you would say. And then other times, it's very much like an industry process. You have your pre-production, your production, and your post-production process. So pre-production is like, you get sent briefs to your email. So I get kind of 2 to 3 emails a day saying, this artist is looking for this kind of a song, and this is the due date. Please send in your submissions. And then you could send in a song, or go into a camp or go into a session, and that's the writing process, and it's very focused on the brief. It's like kind of They want burger and chips, we're going to make burger and chips. And then the kind of the post-production process is then, right, let's make this better, let's move this around, let's turn it from a demo into a master. So you've got like a real range. It can go from being the most personal thing in the world to being, in a way, the most, artificial thing in the world sometimes, but in a great way. I mean, I love both. So
can I just add to one of the things that made me think about the in the camp. So if you imagine you're put into a situation in a room where with people that you may never have met before in your life, and then all of a sudden you're talking about the most intimate things. You're opening your heart up. I mean, if I get somebody crying, that's a good day, So it's you do get really, kind of emotional, and then you've made the best friends ever. And I think that was the surprising thing that came out of this process for me. I just wanted to add that.
So obviously one of the things we talked about a lot is songwriting camps, and because you've been researching quite a few of them, I wonder if we could start from the point, Catherine, of first of all explaining what a songwriting camp is and how it works, and then I wonder if you've had any reflections, having actually started to participate in them, as to how songwriting works in those environments.
Yeah, I think this is all going to knit together quite well, actually, because I've been thinking as you guys were talking. So a songwriting camp is a usually multi-day situation where songwriters, producers, and top-liners get together to write songs. And they come together, there's a group of them, and they will be assembled into teams every day by the organizer. So every day you start a new song with two other people or three other people that you might not have worked with before and might not know before. And by the end of the day, you'll have written a song. It's a tight deadline. There's always like a really high-octane energy because people are excited and they kind of thrive on that energy. Do you agree with that? So that's how songwriting camps work. And I've noticed from observing, I've noticed different ways of people going around writing songs. So there's from the very mechanical, data-driven way, where I remember the first one I sat in on, I thought, I didn't think you just cut and pasted a song. I didn't think that was how you created art. But it almost felt like watching that, because the producer was running a tape the whole time, was recording everything that was jammed or riffed in the room, and at the end of the day, he sort of spliced it up and it was a song. And that really shattered my dreams. And then there's the approach that I've adopted myself, which I learned largely from working with people like Emma and Gethin Pearson at Rockfield Studios, which is you start your session even when you have a very definite timeline. You have to have something ready to perform or to play through the speakers at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., whatever timeline it is. Even in that tight time frame, the session starts with a very relaxed chat about how you're doing today. And the chat, it almost feels like you're just warming up, getting ready to write a song. In fact, that's definitely how I perceived it the first few I sat in on. And then I realized that that's such an integral process. It's such an integral part of learning what the mood is in the room, kind of sounding out whether there's something the artist or one of the writers is upset about or excited about, or feels very strongly about at that time, because that's the thing you can hone in on to make a song that's going to speak to that person, but also that emotion will be transferred to the listeners, because that's how popular music works. So that's my process, definitely, to start with that idea and then to map it out into, I like concept songs, story songs, so to map it out into telling a story and have each section of the form do something else with the narrative. But then you have other people I worked with. I sat in on a session with an artist once who came in, walked in, he said, I want to do this, and sang a melody line. And there was nothing else. There was no concept to hang it on. There was no chords or anything. But that was what they went with, because that was the artist. And, I think in that situation, what he said went. So there are lots of ways of doing it. There are lots of ways that I've been privileged to observe.
One of the interesting things that's kind of emerged from the research Jenna and I have done in interviewing people like Emma, amongst others, is that a lot of them were reflecting on part of the process of writing a Eurovision song in a camp often involved almost taking a biography of the artist before and seeing what aspects of their life that they want to communicate and they want to speak about. And we've already seen, for example, in this year, I think this year there's going to be about 136 songwriters involved in the Eurovision Song Contest. and all but 5 nations have the artist involved in the writing process. Now, as we'll probably hear a little bit in a second, it's not necessarily always the artist doing a lot of work. So quite often an artist will be given a songwriting credit for, shall we say, smaller contributions in some way, or to project authenticity. But it's quite interesting to see the role of the artist being involved in this process is now being seen as vital, even if it's a bit of an illusion. And I just wondered, Emma, sorry to put you on the spot. I wonder if you can kind of talk through the process, because obviously you were writing with Marko, who was the entrant for Croatia. Could you give us any insights as to what it was like in the writing room, and did you have a particular process to kind of connect with that? Or?
I don't know if that's a leading question, because he actually wasn't, even if you heard his interview, he wasn't actually with us at the time the song was written. However, we wanted him to make it his own. So we took a song to him. We actually did pitch it to another country that were keen on it the year before, but they decided not to go ahead with it. So this was the second country it went to. And Marko loved the song. And also we wanted to kind of give him some flexibility over the song. We wanted him to make it his own. So it was important that we kind of brought him into the process. So we went to Zagreb in Croatia and we spent a day with him where he was recording the vocals and he was adding, you know, a little bit to the song. So yeah, but it's important, I think, to make sure that the artist is engaged with the song.
Yeah, of course, Cam.
So I want to go back to the first question we had, which was about, are songwriters given enough credit? Because if it's my understanding that songwriters that co-write get equal credit for the song, does an artist who comes in late or minimally also get equal credit?
In that case, no. But I think it depends on the arrangement you decide to make. I mean, ultimately, the song was written, really, so we wanted to engage him. He loved the song. He did add some melodies and stuff, so that was really good. I think every situation's different, and it will depend if a label's involved as well. So, you know, it just depends.
And I wonder, Jenna, if you can speak to any experiences you might have had. Have you had the artist in the room with you whilst you've been writing, or is it similar to Emma, having the songs kind of written first and then taking it to the artists? It's been a mixture.
Yeah, absolutely been a mixture. And I remember being in the room with a great artist, an Irish artist, because my accent's Northern Ireland originally. And we co-wrote a song together, but at the end of the day, he took a greater split because as far as he was concerned, he was the artist. He was going to have to sell the song. He was going to have to invest in the song, because anybody in this room who's looked into music business of any kind will know that, a record label deal is not just, a grant. It is a business deal. And you're expected to pay back any costs that you incur. So it was his name, he was going to front the song. So I absolutely said that's absolutely fine. And we agreed a split where I took less, he took more, and that was absolutely fine at the end of the day. Other times I've been a part of groups of maybe 3 or 4 people in a room where we've written a song with the artist not there at all. We didn't even know they were on the cards at that point. And then just later on, when push comes to shove, the publisher says they want a cut of the song. Because in publishing, a lot of money in music is in publishing. So the artist will say, well, look, this is my life as well. I've got to pay for myself. So why should I have none of the publishing whenever it's still my name on the top? So in those scenarios, we've said, yeah, that's fine. Sometimes it's an equal share. Sometimes it's a nominal share to just say yes and thank you and we really appreciate you. So yeah, there's really no formula. You've got to agree it. And having a signed split sheet in the room is incredibly important in that regard, because if something happens with the song, you need that. Otherwise, it's all based on what he said, she said. And that is not a happy situation for anybody. So get your split sheet signed.
That split sheet becomes so valuable when the song becomes valuable.
I wonder if you can tell, because we've got a lot of students in the room who might also be at that stage, and even writers who are new in the room who might not understand what a split sheet is. So could you tell us a little bit more detail about what is a split sheet? What's the kind of process involved?
Absolutely. So a split sheet is thankfully one of the simplest kind of documents in publishing in the music industry. It's normally a one-pager, and it just simply says the date, the writer's names, their percentage of the song, and they have to sign it, and it is then sent to everybody's publisher, or if they are self-published, they will keep it for themselves. It is normally done at the end of the day, and some camps insist on having it done. They will not do the listening session or complete the week until they have all of their split sheets signed. Some camps work where they just announce at the start of the week, everybody's getting a fair share. If you're a producer in the room, you get a share as if you were a writer, and so on and so forth. And then other camps just leave it open for you to decide. It's at the discretion of the writers involved.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So we're going to open up back out to the floor and see if you've got any questions about the discussions we've had about songwriting camps and writing processes. But here are just some of the provocation questions we had for this section. So, where do songs come from and how are they written? You've shared some of your processes already. What are the most important commercial practices songwriters engage with? So if you've got experience of that, or if you want to ask the panel about that, you can. And then also we've been thinking about how do songwriters balance creativity with these commercial demands. So obviously we've heard a lot about how songwriters get briefs that they often have to write to. So how do you balance that with being creative? So I wonder if anyone in the room has either any thoughts themselves about this, or if anyone's got a question they'd like to ask around this topic. We shall see. Go for it, Sam.
Thank you, everyone. I've got a question for, it's Emma, right? Emma. You mentioned writing a song and pitching it to different countries for Eurovision, and I'm fascinated in what kind of changes might be made to a song to make it fit the sort of the nationality of the country. So, for example, the song that was rejected by another country and then accepted by Croatia, I don't know if that's been performed yet, but what kind of Croatian flavour was put into the production aspects of the song and the performance that maybe wasn't in the song when you pitched it to, I don't know, Italy or whatever?
It actually not very little, I think, and that's what Marco did. He took the melody and then added some kind of Balkan sounds at the end. So with that song, it was basically done, and then he added some stuff. Other songs, I think, because I think Eurovision is so varied now, I think anything goes, really. So, I think as long as you are... They normally have rules. Different countries have different rules as to how many writers can be from, not outside of the country. Some countries don't care. But I think now you don't really have to write it specifically for the country. And I know that I've got a friend that was on the jury the listening jury for Ireland, and they said they get an awful lot of songs that people think sound Irish, and actually for them it's not what they want. They want something different, hence maybe the reason why they chose a song from Norway last year. But so I think really it doesn't, you don't have to kind of conform to the country. And you'll find songs are pitched from country to country to country until one sticks. So
great. And I think you wanted to come on to this.
I just wanted to add a kind of anecdote, which it's not completely directly quoted, it's paraphrased because of time and memory and stuff. But it's Greg Watts, who was your publisher, who is very, very hot on Eurovision. He's always trying to get or supervise an entry to Eurovision. And I remember after a writing day at one of his Eurovision camps, hearing him say, well, I'm not sure that song with a German singer is right. But there was a French lady in that room, we'll do a French version. And I had the kind of same response as you. I assumed that something national had to go into the songs, but that it seemed to be so easily interchangeable that it could just be another version with a different language was quite astounding. Is that correct in your... Yeah.
Great. Any other questions, any other thoughts in the room? Yeah, please go for it.
Are you always satisfied with the end results, or do you always think, I could have done more?
That's a great question. Who would like to go? Do you want to go first on this, Jenna?
That is a really good question. There are some songs that I've written that when you do a session, you think that was so special. Whether you've written it yourself or written it with other people, and you think that is going to go somewhere, that is going to be number one, and no one takes it. And it goes on the song mountain, as we call it, and it sits there on a hard drive and does nothing. And that's heartbreaking. And then sometimes you'll write a song, it'll be a normal day, it'll be like, yeah, it was all right. And then it'll be chosen, it'll be recorded. It'll be like, wow, why that song and not this one that, no shade or anything. But yeah, it's a really weird thing. And I think you just have to kind of make peace with it. This is why I really admire artists who they believe in everything so much, what they do, that, for a song to be rejected is like having a limb torn off their body. Songwriters, we can't really do that. So yeah, it is, it's difficult. How about you, Emma?
I kind of want to go. I think I get to a stage when I'm writing a song where I think this is as best I can make it. So when I am in a situation when maybe the team are kind of saying, I think this is enough, I am sometimes it depends who I'm working with. Sometimes I say, no, it's not enough, we've got to keep going. But sometimes I do walk away thinking, I wish we could have done this and I wish we could have done that. But normally I'm pretty good at going, actually, I think I've done everything I can now. And, if people like it, great. If not, it's the best I could do. So,
Catherine?
Yeah, so I had a couple of observations to add to that. So the first one comes from interviewing you, Emma, right at the beginning of my project years ago. And Emma said at the time that the most important thing, she felt a song was really successful when it connected with someone else in the listening room. It didn't even have to be cut or released. If in the listen through at the end of a day, if someone else responded emotionally, that was a win. That was a successful song. And the other point I just wanted to bring up was, well, how do we define success here and being satisfied? Because one of the other publishers in Greg's company, Pete Barringer, always cites one of his songs that did incredibly well, which was essentially a joke song about a dog. But it earned him lots of money, and he's living quite happily, I think. And so that's a successful song for him, even though he kind of laughs at the artistic integrity of it. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So we're going to move to our final section for today about commercial returns for songwriters. And we're going to ask you what could be a relatively controversial question. What do you think the average annual income for a songwriter is? So you may be a songwriter yourself, you may have an average annual income. Don't worry, it's all anonymous.
Sam, is it someone that only works as a songwriter?
Oh, that's a good question. What should we say? What do you reckon?
It's your question.
Yeah, if it's for songwriting work. So if you have another job, it's the portion that comes from songwriting. Yeah, that's how we'll do it. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So we're seeing kind of what comes in. It gives us kind of a mean average of amounts as we're coming in. A very specific amount of 2023. So we're seeing these answers coming in. 10,000 a year, 18,000 a year, 5,000 a year. Ooh, they're shifting and changing. At the top, it's just calculating an average. So at the moment, the average of the responses is 14,835 and 25 pence. That's your Spotify million streams at the end. So we'll just give it another moment. We can see that figure dancing about and moving. So I think I'll just bring that poll to a close. Oh, just in time as well. So we've ended up on an average here of £14,144.50. The majority of people thought it kind of sat around the 5,000 space. Then we've got underneath that people who thought it was around kind of 8 to 10,000. Some optimistic people at the bottom saying 12,000 as well, dragging the kind of average up. But, I mean, I'm not going to ask all of our panellists to tell you their personal finances. No, this is not going to happen as such, unless you're willing, I guess.
Well, I can relate to the £14,144.05 or 50 pence. That's probably how much it cost me to be a songwriter last year.
What are those kind of costs that were involved?
Well, I mean, it's probably about right, funnily enough, but it would be. I did do a couple of intensive years of going to songwriting camps, so that would be travel. I live in Weymouth in Dorset, so I have to get to the airport first. So travel to the airport. Most of the camps I did were international camps, so it would be flights, it would be accommodation, it would be camp fees. Eating, drinking, and all of the things that come to it. But I mean, if you think about the camp fees, which can be about £1,000 upwards, then there's not many camps in that 14,000 for the year, really. I'm in a position where I'm lucky. I've been able to kind of change my day job, but I have to have a day job as well.
Very, very interesting. Jen, have you got any thoughts on? I'm not going to ask you to share it. Don't worry.
No. Definitely, average is an interesting word because, I think for so many people, if you had a timeline and an amount per year, it could be really high one year and then really low the next. I mean, I remember applying for a mortgage based on just pure songwriting work, and they were like, "We want to see 10 years." It's because it's that up and down. So I think an average income is really tricky because you kind of don't really see it like that. I kind of see it as if I have got a really big hit, I know that's going to serve me really well for 2 or 3 years, but then I might not have one for a year or, so it goes really up and down. But I think I'm really pleased to see that the numbers that people have put are really real world. I would have thought someone was like £100,000. These are really reasonable figures, and I think the mean of 14,000. I think the Musicians Union said that the average there was around 12,000 or something like that. So it looks like the room's got it, pretty close.
And is there anything you want to add?
Sorry, I can always add something.
Yeah, of course.
So just to put on the other end of the spectrum. Someone I was songwriting with the other day who also has a day job, very busy day job, but is trying to make it as a songwriter and a musician. He said, "Do you have any idea how many streams I had to get to earn $100 off Spotify?" And just if you're not kind of in the high-flying, the real professional circles, it's a really, really hard world to break into, I think. But also, as we were chatting about earlier, income for a songwriter, I think we've all taken this to mean from the songs that sell professionally. But income for a songwriter could be from other things. For example, as we've been learning on the project on songwriting camps, from hosting camps, from encouraging other people to write songs. So income can come from a different source, but it is to do with songwriting.
I definitely resonate with the Spotify statistics as well, because my last royalty statement, I think I've got a track that's got about 5 million streams on Spotify. I only got paid £100 from it as well. It's very, very low in terms of income. And we also just wanted to just very quickly show you some of the stats from the Eurovision songwriters about how this has an implication on what they do, because as we mentioned before, quite a lot of the writers have to pay for themselves in so many different ways. And the red ones are where they did not have things provided for them in most cases. So I'm just going to try and read this because it's tiny on my screen. But we asked, is going to Eurovision financially viable? The big red bit is loads of people saying no. Were you paid to attend? The big red bit saying no. Did you pay for the accommodation yourself? The green ones, yes. And did you pay for travel yourself? The green ones, yes. It is notable to see there are relatively, on the travel and the accommodation, there are some people who did get paid for, and it's a wildly different picture, isn't it?
I can, if I'm allowed to name names, am I allowed to? I will, because there are some countries that do deserve good recognition. So one of the countries I didn't, and I've recently been to national finals and we didn't get any support, but Norway really support their songwriters well. So we had, and it was a national final, we had flights and accommodation paid for us, so that was really good. And I believe Ireland as well are very good with their songwriters. So I don't think it's every country, I just think it depends which one.
And then we also had, in terms of some statistics as well, what were the kind of advantages that people got out of participating in Eurovision, for example. And one of the top ones was about making new contacts or receiving further work. And then in terms of positive career impact, this was a bit more split. And then in terms of would participate, again, a quite positive picture. But did you want to respond to that, Catherine? Yeah, sure.
Yes, one more comment. So I attended a Eurovision songwriting camp online last year, which was held online. The whole camp was held online, it wasn't just me. And everyone went round the virtual room introducing themselves first off. And one of the guys who had written a national final hit the year before, was working in a hardware shop, and he'd got time off to come to this camp. And around the virtual Zoom room, people sort of sighed as though that was really sad that he had to have another job, but it's just life. It seems like and Emma has just attested that you can't guarantee on making enough money, certainly starting out, I think, in doing songwriting full time.
So I wonder if I could ask you because we kind of almost covered that, how do songwriters make money in various different ways? But what about the second question of how do songwriters kind of maximise the financial return from songs? What are the kind of things either you've done or you've seen people do to make sure they can get the most mileage financially out of the songs that they write?
I'm now starting to ask for a share of the master because I am very proactive with the song. So I can do that. I'm actually looking after other songwriters as well. So I'm kind of, building up my network and introducing songwriters to other songwriters in a hope that, I'll get a cut potentially of what they might write. But it isn't easy. I think they're kind of the main things that I do.
Yeah, getting yourself on PRS. If you haven't already, get yourself on PRS. They do kind of like 6 months in arrears if you know that your work is active. Also get yourself on PPL as well, because if you've written a song and you've done like backing vocals, things like that, or played an instrument on it, and then that goes through to be used on the master, you will get royalties for that. I think a lot of songwriters miss that they get royalties from PPL in that sense. So do that. If you're working and pitching songs in parts of the world, say, for example, where royalties are difficult to kind of to get to, negotiate an upfront fee, which is very, very typical and very much accepted, and really negotiate there, because it's very unlikely after the song is cut or released that you'll see any financial return for that. And you can also, if you're just someone starting out, you're playing your songs in venues, you can log those performances on PRS and you will get paid for them, and it will be a very small amount, but you can go on and tell PRS about activity that's going on around your music, and they will listen.
Can I just quickly get you to explain what PRS and PPL are for those in the room who might not know what those organisations are?
Yes, so in music you've kind of got 2 sides. You've got the written side, which is like the publishing side, kind of think of sheet music, that kind of thing. And then you have the recorded side. So when it comes to the songwriters, we mainly deal with the publishing side, everything you could write and notate down, essentially. And so there are 2 sides to this. So we have PRS for music, which is a combination of PRS and MCPS, lots of acronyms. They brought them together for PRS for music. And that is every time a song is played, it could be a covers band in a pub, it could be the music playing in a bar, it could be the artist playing Wembley. That generates a royalty for you as the writer. And then when it comes to PPL, that is the performance side of things. So if you have performed on the record in any kind of way, this could be as a session musician, if you haven't signed away your rights on the record, you can then claim royalties from that as well. So there is the written side and the performance side. And yeah, there are separate entities, PPL and PRS.
And actually, that's a really good point about PRS, because I assumed that my publishers would register the performances that my artists had done, but they don't. So now I send an email. It takes a lot of time. I send an email to all of my artists, once every couple of months, and just say, can you give me a list of the gigs that you've played? And so that I can then register them myself as a songwriter. And actually, I haven't had any money yet, but I think that money will be more than the royalties at the moment until they build up. So it is really important to get that into your process, because it is money that you just won't get, that you deserve.
And Catherine, do you have any thoughts from some of the songwriters that you've met? Have they talked about how they kind of maximise their financial returns?
Well, not directly, and I guess I'm missing a trick in not asking about that. But I did want to just leapfrog on something that Jenna said, which is about the performance. And I'm only speaking about demos here created at songwriting camps, and that would be the end of the day recording. But it was very noticeable to me that in professional songwriting sessions, every writer wanted to jump on in some way so that their voice or their instrument was heard, even just a tiny bit. They wanted to have performance on the record so that they'd get, I suppose, the other kind of royalty from it.
Yeah, that's right. PPL have something now called the performing producer, which is a really interesting concept, which is the idea that a producer has so much of an artistic imprint on the master recording that they're considered a performer, if you like. So you can register yourself as a performing producer now, which is very interesting.
Absolutely fascinating. So we're going to open it up again to the audience. I don't know if any of our songwriters in the room have some hints and tips that they've come across that they'd like to share, or if there's specific things that you've tried before and you want to ask our panel about how to do certain things in terms of maximising financial returns, that'd be welcome. So has anyone got any thoughts, any questions that they'd like to ask? Ewan?
Just a very quick anecdote. One of my colleagues who's now retired told me that he produced the Birdie song, which anyone of my sort of age will remember from primary school onwards. And I think he got 50 quid for it.
I'm really disappointed because I'm quoting the Birdie song all the time, because I say a song has to have emotion. And even, I said this yesterday, even the Birdie song is transmitting a message, and everybody knows it. That's really sad.
Thanks, Ewan.
Go on,
Catherine.
I'm going to just add an anecdote. My mum loves, when she hears what I'm working about, she's not a musician whatsoever. She hears what I'm working on. She always wheels out an anecdote of the percussionist on one of Rolf Harris's singles. And obviously we don't want to talk about Rolf Harris, but this percussionist took a one-off payment instead of having a cut in it, like a share in it. And the song was Two Little Boys, and it went on to just sell and sell and sell and play and play and play. So yeah, always good to have the split sheet, I think.
Definitely. We've got a hand up over here at the front, middle. Yep.
Hi, yeah. Do you ever get to the point you think there's so many people involved in this, it's just not worth trying to force my way into this and walk away?
I would love to be able to walk away, but I can't. Every day I say to myself, my day job pays me a whole lot more than this, but I can't. So for some reason I'm stuck.
Yeah, it's really tricky now. And we've been talking about things this afternoon about like AI and things like, Suno and the power of technology now. And so many people getting involved in music. People can produce in their bedrooms, like make whole albums in their bedrooms. And it can feel a little bit like sometimes you're throwing songs at, briefs where there are thousands of songs. But there, I guess, like any form of art, right? There's a drive in you. That's why people go into the performing arts or the creative arts. There is like a motivation or a need to make something that matters or that has impact. So I guess you either quieten that voice down or you just keep on trucking,
I also wonder, have you ever been in a situation, for example, at a songwriting camp where there are a lot of people in the room and there may be, because we've seen on some songwriting credits like up to 10, up to 12. This year, the highest in Eurovision is about 9 songwriters on one song. Have you ever been in that situation where there's just too many people in the room that you've been like, oh, I'm going to step out of this, I'm not going to add anything here or anything like that?
I've been in a room with 5 and I did the opposite. Because it was a bit chaotic, so I kind of took the lead. But that's really hard. Actually, we did get a song, but it's really, really hard with 5 people because that's 5 opinions and 5 different melodies and 5, so that's hard. But then, I think sometimes you don't want to break that because the song comes for that reason. So, when you walk into the room, you say, oh gosh, there's 4 people, but often a great song comes out.
Brilliant. I think we had a question at the back, so we should like to ask it.
Hi, thank you. Thanks to the whole panel. This has been really interesting and really useful, so thank you to everybody for contributing. I'd just like to ask a productivity question. So when you're working in your studio and there isn't the kind of imminent deadline of the songwriting camp, how do you harness that kind of creativity and actually, be productive?
ADHD. So I'm better with a deadline. So for me, if my deadline's in 3 weeks' time, then I'm better close to the deadline. But I think as well, once you get into the song and you're really, you know where it's going, I think then sometimes it's really hard to stop until it's finished.
Yeah, definitely when times are quiet, it's really nice to just sit down and write a song for yourself, knowing that it won't see the light of day. Maybe you've just written it for yourself that day, because you're just listening to, I guess, the music that's inside you, and it's like writing in a diary or a journal, if you like. So that's really nice to do, to just kind of lift your spirits before you go back into the commercial world.
I guess my comment on that would just be to go back to that Benny Anderson quote that someone put up, that inspiration will only come if you're working in the room, basically. And that kind of sentiment has been echoed so many times by artists. Duke Ellington said it. It's loads of pop musicians say it. So I think it's just keep on showing up, really.
Brilliant. And I think we had a question over here.
Hi, I would like to ask Jenna, because you've already did collaboration with a Korean company or Japanese company. So what do you think, like, if in a song camp, big songwriting camp, what is the differences like between different countries related to the fee share, like the copyright fee?
Sorry, the last part of that question, was that to do with the creative, how it differs creatively, or how it differs on the business side of things?
Because I heard of that in different, like even if a songwriting camp in different countries, like the songwriters share the copyright fee in a different way. So I'm quite curious about that. Yes. That is quite an important difference. So if I've written for South Korea or Japan, normally you give away 50% of the publishing up front, which is like really shocking, isn't it? When the first time you
Translation fee.
Yeah. And you think, what? Half of the song is just gone. But that is the way it works. And once you get kind of past that, the rest of the 50% is then divvied up between the writers involved. I have had situations with labels and publishers where they have restricted the number of writers who are beyond a certain publishing company, because they know they will get overall less control and less royalties back to them. So they will say to my publishing company, here's the brief, but we don't want any more than 1 or 2 writers external to your company, because it just waters down the splits too much. So yeah, as they call it, the translation fee. Yeah.
But actually, to get a cut in Korea is worth, so 50% of your Korean cut is probably worth quite a lot more than a Eurovision cut or a cut in Europe.
100%. Yeah, the mechanical royalties from there are they treat songwriters a lot better, so you get bigger returns. So it all balances out in the end.
Brilliant. So are there any more questions anyone wants to ask? We've got one over here. We'll come to Jamil and then we'll go to Duncan afterwards. Oh, and there's one over there. Yeah, no worries.
Greetings. So if you were to give a set list or a checklist of items that you should tick off of your box as a songwriter or an aspiring songwriter, what would that be? Or what could that look like? You mentioned PRS, you mentioned PPL. I know those are some of the things that could come on the list, but would be curious to know. And secondly, you mentioned publishing. What is publishing in the UK? Because I'm from Jamaica, and that means something, maybe something different. Lastly, VPL is a term that I've seen alongside PPL. So if you could probably break down if that's even relevant in the songwriting aspect as well, I'd like to know.
Interesting.
Do you remember the questions? So, do you say what we aspire to or what we need to make sure we do as a songwriter?
Is that a kind of checklist of getting started? Is that what you mean, Jamila?
It's getting started.
It's getting started, okay.
But also, as established songwriters, do you have a checklist of things that you...
It's like rituals, routines.
To make sure that, you...
I was going to say, I want to win a Grammy. I want to win Eurovision. No, I think my checklist would be, obviously... you making sure that, I mean, I've got a publisher, so I do have some support with that, but obviously PRS, PPL, I've never heard of VPL, so I don't know whether you guys have. Making sure you keeping a list of all of the camps you've been to, all of the sessions that you've had, who was at the session, get the split sheets, which doesn't always happen. That's really important, but even I've been to sessions where we haven't done that, so that is a lesson that I need to learn. Keeping a note of people that you've met, because actually part of this business is actually, you know, linking up and meeting up with other songwriters as well, and producers and artists. And I think most of all, the most important thing, number one on the checklist, I think, is being open and just going in with an open mind and being prepared to listen and learn, I think.
So just because of time, because we're finishing very, very soon, and we'll be able to pick these conversations up afterwards. Can we just get those last two questions in the room? We'll take them both together. I'll try and remember them to remind you.
Hi, I'm Duncan. You'll probably tell from the pedantic nature of this question I'm an academic rather than a songwriter. But I was just wondering, when you were talking about the averages of what people earn and things, how does someone get categorised as a songwriter? Is it somebody who's in the union? Is it somebody who self-identifies as a songwriter?
That's going to be a good question. We'll just take the other question as well. Thank you.
You mentioned the sort of mountain of songs that were neglected. I wonder if any of them ever get resurrected. Because I used to be an artist, so I have a lot of songs. But I don't know whether it's worth trying to resurrect them or just start fresh.
Okay. So I tell you what, Catherine, I'm going to put you on the spot as one of the academic experts on songwriting. How do you go about the kind of definition of songwriters? When is songwriter status bestowed upon you?
Okay, so I don't think there's an objective answer to that. I really do think it's self-identifying. And actually, one of our questions, as part of the Songwriting Camps project, we interviewed dozens and dozens of songwriters, and at all levels, professional down to amateur. And one of our questions was, when did you identify as a songwriter? And it is just really fascinating. I think for some people it was a kind of status symbol. They'd maybe had some hits, or for some people it was the amount of time they spent, or the kind of seriousness that other people regarded them with. But there's no strict definition. I think it has to be kind of a self-identification.
Yeah, and even organisations like the Musicians' Union don't have a standardised definition as such around that. Shall we come to Jenna and Emma for the resurrections question? If I could ask for brief answers, if that's okay, just because of time. Have you resurrected things? What have you resurrected?
Yes, it is absolutely possible. So my publisher created like a little in-house database system where of all the songs that me and other writers have ever sent them, they created tags for the songs. I know it sounds incredibly dry and boring, but it's kind of like uplifting, up-tempo, about this kind of thing. So when a brief comes in with these keywords, they actually look up these keywords and they can, pitch these songs. And they do get in touch with me and say, yes, someone's put a track on hold from 2014, and it's like, yay. So it can happen.
And I don't know how long ago you were an artist, but I do know there are agents that definitely look for vintage sounding music. So I don't mean that to be a long time ago, but certainly, you know, some music that's been written over the last, you know, few years. So yeah.
Wonderful. So we're going to have to come to a close here. We're going to stick around probably for a little bit, although trains need to be caught at some point. Thank you so much for coming and engaging for today. I think we've learned so much about the power of recognition in songwriters, being able to share their work with each other and find working opportunities. We talked about the writing process and the influence of songwriting camps. And finally, we've kind of ended on this point of looking at the ways to get those financial returns, which may involve resurrecting songs and bringing them back to life. So I'd like you to please give a round of applause and thank you to, first of all, Catherine Williams, to Jenna Doyle, and to Emma Gale. And thank you very much for coming.